What's going on, everybody? This is Afro Think Tank. Today, I'm going to talk about what America is doing in Nigeria, because as a lot of you know, the American has deployed special forces to Nigeria to assist the Nigerian military in its fight against Boko Haram and Boko Haram adjacent elements in the north of Nigeria. Now, I know a lot of people has been waiting for me to talk about this, and I wanted to wait till I was sitting down and I had the time to really do it, because it's a lot more complex and nuanced than a lot of people are thinking, because most people have a simplistic way of thinking with the interactions between Africa and various other countries. Because of the conditioning that African people have globally, worldwide, most people, when they see Nigeria or any other African country interact with other countries, because unfortunately, a lot of people mentally have a defeatist mentality, and they have no belief in the capability of African countries to be able to do fair business with other countries because of the past. We tend to go to a simplistic, feelings-based analysis of the situation where we'd say, oh, America must be invading. Like every time I post something that says, oh, Nigeria is doing business with Turkey, here comes somebody say, oh my God, Turkey's colonizing Nigeria. Or I say China's just made a deal with Nigeria. They'll say, oh, China is colonizing Nigeria. Listen, you must understand, no one's colonizing Africa. Africa is doing international business. All right. Africa is engaging with the world the way other countries engage with the world. And that's what we want to see. We want to see African nations engage in trade, equal and fair trade with the rest of the world. China's not taking over Africa. China is engaging in fair trade with African nations. Yes, in the past, companies have had predatory practices, but that is not exclusive to Africa. China has predatory business practices with any country, including America, that allows it to, if the people doing business or the corrupt politicians are willing to sell their people out for their own profit. All right. That's just what that is. But all in all, China is not in the business of taking over anything. They're in the business of doing business. Right. And they have capabilities to do things that America does not have the capability to do. And the reason why I'm bringing that up while talking about what America is doing, because it's very important. You see, China, because the Europeans have made China the manufacturing portion of the world, and Africa has been the raw material of the world, and the Western world has been the consumption economic engine of the world. And that's how everything was set up. Due to the fact of Europeans' capitalistic, predatory practices, as we see that the West is currently losing in the race of advancement. They're losing their ability to hold on to power, and they're losing their influence. So the thing is, China, they have a large military, but that's not their thing, right? Their thing is business and construction. So what's happening is China is doing business with Africa by offering construction and infrastructure, right? With the trade out being, if I build these things for you, right? And in turn, these are the things that we need in our nation, and we would like to trade that. That's a good trade, right? And in return, Africa is saying, okay, we used to trade raw material, but we're going to add value to that material, and we want more money for our resources. So most African countries who are not being led by overly corrupt politicians. Now, every politician is a level of corrupt. There's never in the history of politics, in the history of mankind, has there ever been an omnipotent government where there was no corrupt politicians and everything worked out right. Never in the history of politics, ever. Never, ever, never. And it never will be, because humans are fallible, right? But within that corruption, business does get done. All right. So the thing is, China has such a leverage in Africa because they have a capability of just building cities, building roads, building infrastructure. They have a leverage because they know that's what Africa needs. Now, Europe and the West, their foreign policy towards Africa was to keep them undeveloped so that Africa could be in a subservient position, and the Western world can continue to exploit them for their goods and for their products and all that stuff. But now that Africans are saying we no longer want to do business like that, they're not doing business like that. African countries are no longer doing business like that. I'm not sure if anybody's paying attention, but African countries are no longer accepting the exploitation because they now know what it is they have. And Nigeria is the giant of Africa. Right now, yes, is Nigeria corrupt? Yes, Nigeria is corrupt from its president all the way down to the local police officer. Everybody has a culture of corruption, and this is not just exclusive to Nigeria. This goes for many countries around the world, including Ukraine, very corrupt. Ukraine and Russia, the two most corrupt countries before this war started. All right, and look where they are now. So what we got to understand is, in order for Africa to get where it needs to be, Nigeria has to stand up and get where it needs to be, because Nigeria is the America of Africa. Okay, America has the biggest, Nigeria has the biggest population, and it has the most capability when it comes to in its resources compared to other African countries. And it has the people and the intellect to do these things. But the problem is they don't have the infrastructure. And because of the previous war in Libya, right, all those Arab savage barbarians have been running around in the desert causing problems for West Africa, right? The same terrorist organizations, which they're Islamic organizations that, like, these people really believe that, like, in the 7th century, these people are anti-intellectual. Like, you build a school, if they see people being educated, they're going to try to kill them, because the educated population would not subscribe to their form of Islam. All right. And these people who call themselves Islamic terrorists, call themselves Islamic Caliphate or whatever they like to call them, these guys are not even really practicing Islam, because you're not supposed to kill other Muslims. And this is exactly what they do. They kill Muslims. Right. So when it comes to that, and the people who sponsor that it's not just America. America sponsored it in certain other ways in certain countries. Right. In France, we have to remember, France has been neo-colonizing Africa for a very long time. They sponsor, they fund these organizations in order for them to destabilize regions that they need to be destabilized, in order for peacekeepers or UN troops to go in there under the guise of keeping the peace, and they literally steal the resources from the ground, from these places that have been emptied, because these terrorists, right, which they are, Islamic, Arab worshiping African people and Arabs, okay, because they're both African and Arabs, but they worship Arabs and they worship Islam, even though none of them are Islamic. None of them practice true Islam. They smoke, they drink, they eat pork, they kill their own people. These people do not practice Islam. But that is the medium that's being used for these uneducated youth that have no economic opportunities in these countries, right? They have no education. So even though you would assume that a common sense individual would know what's right and wrong, I'm telling you, as a counter-terrorist expert myself, who's trained and who's an expert on dealing with these kinds of people, both kinetically and psychologically and socially, I'm telling you right now, these people are the most unintelligent, illiterate groups of people on the planet. All of them, from the Taliban to Al-Qaeda to ISIS to Boko Haram, all of them are highly uneducated, very gullible, susceptible young men that truly believe when they die, somehow they're going to have 70-something virgins. Like, why would you need virgins if you're dead? Like, spirit cooch? I'm like, did that even make sense? Right? But that's neither here nor there. So one thing you got to understand is France and America never, when it comes to colonization, America loves the fact that France is being kicked out of Africa, because America never really respected French people. America don't like French people. The American whites don't like French people, because American whites have been warring with French, because you got to remember the American whites are English adjacent, German adjacent. They don't like the French, right? They don't respect the French, like never have. They work together and cooperate together under the United Nations when necessary. But all in all, anytime America has the opportunity to undermine the French, they will do it, right? So as the AES, right, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger kick French out, because French and the French companies are stealing, right, from Africa. As they kick them out, France is currently operating a black ops operation to try to kill the leaders right now. That's what's happening. The French, their country cannot stand. Their economies cannot run if they're not stealing, because their foundation for France and their white Wakanda is, in fact, Africa and its resources they've been getting for free, basically, right? So now that they're getting cut off, America sees an opportunity to step in and replace them with the one thing that America can export. Because we can't, there's not enough Americans. They're not going to go over there and build roads and cities. America can't do that. So we can't offer these African countries that, but China can. And we all know that's the one thing Africa needs is infrastructure, right? And revamping of older infrastructure, right? So since America can't compete with that, they can't offer African countries that, they have to find something else they can actually offer these African countries. Now, yes, America, when given the opportunity, will prop up a dictator, right? They will do that. And you got to understand, we fight with our friends and we trade with our friends. As China is supposedly the white Europeans' biggest enemy, but they're on one of our number one trading partners. China's people come and they vacation in America. Americans go to China and vacation, but yet they are our enemy. You understand? We do trade with Russia, even though currently we're sponsoring the Ukrainians to fight against Russia. Quasi kind of like, but we still have trade deals and we still do business with Russia. I mean, you understand? So all these communist countries that we always demonize, they're our biggest trading partners. So politics and diplomacy is very nuanced, right? So you can do business with your enemy if you both have interest that you need to be satisfied. So Nigeria's interest is to deal with the terrorist organizations in the north, right? And that's sponsored by the French, right? Because these dudes, they have access to things they shouldn't have, like drones. They're getting these guns. All this came from the backdrop of French and Western arming militias in order to fight against other militias. That's a downfall. And when I was in Afghanistan, we in fact had militias, right? We trained militias, right, to fight other people we don't like. I myself, when I was in Afghanistan, I had a whole platoon. I had a whole squad of Taliban myself. Me. I'm 17 years old. I'm 18 years old, and I have 5 Taliban fighters that I'm going out on patrol with, so we can go find other Taliban. You got to understand that, right? Just like you guys think that we lost the war in Afghanistan. No, the Taliban that's in charge now are the Taliban that we were working with to go fight the other Taliban, because the Taliban is a political organization. The Taliban and Al Qaeda are two different things. The Taliban don't believe in blowing themselves up, right? They're more educated than Al Qaeda. ISIS is nothing but a more extreme version of Al Qaeda. Al Qaeda don't like ISIS. ISIS fights Al Qaeda. Right now, you have a new Taliban K, which Americans are currently sponsoring because they are now fighting against the Taliban that are now currently running the government. So you got to understand, it's way more complicated than your local news organizations tell you, because you guys wouldn't understand how complex that is. That doesn't make for good news. Good news, you need shock and awe and simplistic messages in order to push the propaganda forward, right? Like, the news organization tell you hate Russia. You don't even know why you hate Russia. The news organization tell you to hate China. They're your enemy. But you, for the life of you, can't explain why, in fact, China is your enemy, because you never had a problem with China. China never had a problem with you. But it's something that's propagandized into the minds of people to make them our default enemy. Yet, there are some of our biggest trading partners, and we cannot live without each other. Now, Nigeria, just like China, is starting to step up on the world stage as a global world leader. Nigeria will be one of the multipolar centers of power on the world. But in order for that to happen, first things first is you need security. You need to secure your resources, right? And you need to secure your borders, and you need to secure the propaganda in order to stop that from happening, so that you have the time, space, and the safety to build. You see, Europeans have an interest in Nigeria. Now, every time you see me post something that says, oh, Nigeria does a deal with America, you automatically believe, oh, that's evil. Oh my God, Nigeria, why don't they do business with themselves? You got to understand, you can't just do business by yourself. And they can't just do business with other smaller countries in Africa the same way they can do business with other major economies. Nigeria is a massive economy compared to other African economies. Other African economies need Nigeria to stand up so that they can attach themselves to the Nigerian economy in order to build their countries, right? So now that Nigeria is joining the club, even though they have been suppressed for very long, by the powers that be, which is natural. All nations that gain superpower status attempt to hold back other powers from being superpowers. That's the law of nature. If you're in the top of the hill, if you're the king of the hill, you want to be the only one. You want to stop as many people from being the king of the hill as possible, and your foreign policy will reflect that, right? But you come to a point in time where you realize you can't stop these people from getting to the top of the hill, no matter what efforts you put forth to do that, which America and the West have put a lot of energy, great deal of money and energy to stop Nigeria from getting to the point where it's on its way to. All right. So, like, for instance, when the military would order weapons from America, America would take forever to deliver those weapons. If Nigeria don't have the weapons to fight Boko Haram, and Boko Haram is getting weapons from France, how do you expect the Nigerian military to defeat an opposition that's being financed and being armed by one Western nation, and you yourself don't have the weapons to fight back? That's the problem. So Nigeria's saying this: hey, if you give me this, we can do business like that. And it's not a subservient way. This is a partnership. Because the thing is, America and American corporations and other foreign corporations who want to make money, in order to make money, right, you need to sell something to somebody, right? So if you have a group of people, you have a populous nation, that's potential future customers, right? And also, Nigeria has the most people, so those are potential future workers for their countries. But if you want to get to that, you have to stop the killing from happening, because that's the only way foreign workers are going to come in there and they're going to actually be able to operate effectively. You can't set up manufacturing plants. You can't set up mines. You can't set up commercial and manufacturing plants when you have to deal with instability. So it behooves America, who wants to have a great relationship with Nigeria. America, even though we have a neo-Nazi administration right now, America is much bigger than this current administration that you see here, right? There are a lot of other people within the military industrial complex, within the private contractor complex, within all these apparatuses that know it's better to be partnered with Nigeria than to make them an enemy. Because when they stand up, they're going to remember it. And you got to understand there's an ever-growing Nigerian population in America. And also, you African Americans may not take this in consideration because a lot of people are not educated on where they come from. But you see, white people know where we came from. White people know the demographics of African Americans. White people know that. They know we're from Nigeria. They got the receipts. In the National Archives, you can look up. They have the receipts, original receipts, port of call, or where they came and grabbed all of us, the name of the ship, where it landed in America, and how many, right? So you got to understand, America, it behooves them to have a great relationship with a population that is related to a massive population that they have in America. The African American population is a large and significant population who are currently being educated to find out, and they're finding out where they're from. The cohesion of Nigerians and African Americans is solidifying as we speak, which causes a problem for Europeans, because now there's the power apparatus in America being connected with the power apparatus of Nigeria, as the new crop of Nigerian politicians are popping up. The younger crowd who have been the victims of puppet regimes, who have been the victims of white Western propaganda, are now standing up with that education, along with the Nigerian diaspora that's going out and getting all this knowledge from all these universities right around the world and bringing a lot of that back to Nigeria, bolstering the capability of Nigeria. So it's a very good thing that America is in Nigeria. We want to have Nigeria and America to have a great relationship in the future. We don't want an adversarial relationship with them. Yes, things need to be corrected and business need to be done correctly and fairly, but it behooves all of us that America and Nigeria have a great relationship going into the future. That is most important, and America knows that, despite the rhetoric you hear from this current administration, right? So the only thing we can export, the thing that we can give to the Nigerian people that China can't do, is that we can teach them special capabilities to tackle terrorism in the North. We can give them equipment and train them on that equipment so they can operate effectively in the North to take care of these bandits. Now, I want to put something in context. A lot of you watch news, and just recently you saw that like 200 people were killed by these bandits. Now, this was a retaliation from the ongoing campaign that the Nigerian government has been conducting, eliminating terrorists. They killed one of the leaders of Boko Haram. They've been almost total war in the north, attacking these elements who mean to destabilize the northern portion of Nigeria, right? So they've been doing an excellent job, but you got to understand that Nigeria is vast, and they have a lot of open space, and there's a lot more people than you know. Those people are not. I'm telling you, there's more than 200, 300 million people in Nigeria. It's got to be 500 million at least, right? And the places they're attacking in the north are very sparsely populated. I would say that these are the places when you look on TV and you see the super rural areas and you see like mud hut, like what you would say mud huts and things. These are the people that live on the fringes of civilization, right? Like right next to them, you got the Discovery Channel. All right. You go past these people. Now you're talking about straight wilderness. Right. And so the terrorists are operating in straight wilderness. There's so much land out there. The Nigerians and a lot of African countries don't have satellites the way we have, to where we can look at every spot of our country and we can see these people moving around and we can see them operating and we can see them do. They don't have that capability the way America has that capability, right? And so what's happening is Nigeria has went to Turkey and went to Russia and has gained some of those capabilities in order to be able to do that. America is not going to allow Nigeria to stand their militaries up and be basically effective without them being involved. Because if they do that, then what leverage would America have in these African countries if we can't export one of our greatest assets, which is our military capability, right? So America is saying, hey, we're going to help you now. We're going to do this right. Now, Donald Trump, in order to justify this, he has to tell his people that, oh, these Muslims are killing Christians in the north. Because even though foreign policy says we're really doing this so that we can secure Nigeria, so that our corporations can reap the benefits of good business with Nigeria economically going towards the future, he can't say that. A white Western MAGA is not trying to hear that. They're not trying to hear people say, oh, we're sending our American troops to another country in order to secure their land so that our American companies can go over there and start businesses and build the economy. They're not trying to hear that, because that doesn't, the MAGA's not, it's like, how does that benefit me? It doesn't benefit you. If you're a MAGA, if you're a white American, it really doesn't benefit you at all, unless you plan on going to Nigeria and doing business. If you're African American and you're a Pan-African, you plan on one day going to Nigeria doing business. If you plan on one day going to Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger to do business or to live, it behooves you that America export its greatest asset, which is its military capability, to these countries, and do it in a fair way. That's what's happening. That's why you see America re-engaging with the AES, as the AES was formed to decolonize themselves from the Francophone country, right? So now that America realizes, okay, we're not going to be able to stop the AES from organizing into a block, an economic block. And when the AES decided to do joint military cooperation, meaning all three of those countries have created units that are international, as far as, everybody concerned. So you got a military from 3 different countries. Now they have the bodies. Now they're building up the capability, and they're also doing business with Russia, with Turkey, with China, with various other countries. That's saying, you know what? We'll give you our intellectual property. We'll teach you how to do this. We'll give you the tools you need to secure your countries, because once you secure your companies, our companies want to come and do business with you in the fair manner. Right? America's not going to be left out of that. So that's why you see this America sent their diplomats to capitulate. All right. That's what they have to do. This is diplomacy, to capitulate to the newly formed AES. And they're going to say, hey, we're not France. We're willing to do business with you. If you can't beat them, join them. So that's what's happening. So now the foreign policy is changing more towards a partnership and less towards a subservient position. Right. So in Nigeria, right, in the north, which you got to understand, the north, most of Nigeria is fine, right? But the northern border states, which border Niger, All right. And this is these, like I said, this is the desert area. It borders Niger and Burkina Faso, Mali is the same group. So both the AES and Nigeria are fighting the same groups, including Ghana. They don't get much press, but they're also fighting the same group because they all share this border with these savage, barbaric Arab and black Arab African adjacent individuals. Right. So that's basically what happened. And yes, when you hear the numbers of people that's being killed by these bandits, by these terrorists, right? The number of kidnappings that you hear, when you hear it in the news, it does scare a lot of people because it's like, man, the country is this, the country is that. Oh my God, it's so scary. How do you go there? But you got to understand, despite everything that you hear, the violence in Nigeria is nowhere close to the violence in America. Not even close. Not even close. It doesn't even compare. But we're so used to believing the lies that America spills to us on the news networks, you would think that Nigeria is a hellscape and that America is the greatest place in the world and nothing ever happens. But in fact, even though Nigeria has a kidnapping problem, right? Just like many countries who are poor have a kidnapping problem because kidnapping someone for ransom is good business, right? I mean, in the criminal world, it's good business. When people are poor and desperate, they do things, they do criminal things, and kidnapping is just one of those things that they do, right? But in America, how many children disappear every year? How many children have disappeared? America is the #1 place for sex trafficking. How many women disappear every year? How many milk cartons have we seen efface that never reappeared? So kidnapping is much bigger business in America. It's just our media doesn't talk about it because it doesn't look good, right? When it comes to the murders that's happening in the North with this violence, right? Despite the numbers that you see all at once, maybe 100, 200, which is shocking, right? Especially in one day. But look at the statistics of how many people get killed with gun violence every single day in America. It dwarfs what's happening in Nigeria, right? Let alone in a month, how many people, and we're just talking about one state, right? If America was like Chicago, right? If we highlighted Chicago every day and say, that's America. What if we didn't say Chicago? What if we pointed at Chicago and we pointed at Louisiana and we pointed at Baltimore and we pointed out every single hood that has violence going on? We said America and we didn't say the states. We just said that's what's happening in America. No one would come to America. Look at right now. We have things happening in certain states with this white neo-Nazi administration, right? It's happening in certain states, not happening in all states, but happening in certain portions of America, to the point to where people don't even want to come to America because they view all of America as a dangerous hellscape. You see how easily an incident can happen to where everybody believes it's happening everywhere? So no, Nigeria is perfectly safe in most parts of it, but there are areas that have problems, right? And they're being highlighted by those who want to still depict Africa, and Nigeria especially, as a hellscape that you should not invest in because they still want to slow it down. So on one hand, they have to do business fairly because those who are in charge, it doesn't matter. The propaganda doesn't mean anything because they live in the real world, right? So it's like, you're going to do business with us correctly or else, right? But in the media, which is controlled by private organizations, they're still going to lean towards or geared towards their demographic that they needed to support them. So of course, Republicans who are currently in charge is going to make Africa look like a hellscape anyway, and they justify their business decision to use our military to go in to help the Nigerian military. They have to say that the Nigerian Muslims are killing Christians in the North. The Nigerian Muslims are not really killing Christians in the North, right? Now, are Christians dying in the North due to these situations? Yes, because they happen to live there. But the people being targeted are other Muslims. The north of Nigeria is predominantly Muslim. The leadership in the northern of Nigeria practice Sharia law. All right. Literally. Right. So these are Sharia law, politically adjacent individuals being attacked by other people who want to impose Sharia law. You understand? That's how that's working. Right. Now, I don't agree with the federal government allowing these states to operate their Sharia law. Right. I think the federal government should remain secular. Right. And they shouldn't favor Christianity over Islam. Allow people to practice whatever they want to practice. Whether I agree with it or not, you have the right to practice whatever religion you want. But the governing of the country should be secular. right? And that's for the benefit of all people. So I see that the Nigerian politicians are trying to push more towards that, because if your government is based off religion, you'll never get anything done, because religion is in fact anti-intellectual. Both Christianity and Islam is anti-intellectual. They both are. But Islam is more anti-intellectual than Christianity. And that's just facts. That's just what that is, right? So I wouldn't worry about America operating in Nigeria. I wouldn't worry about America's foreign policy in Africa. And you got to understand, these African countries, they have experience dealing with the white Western world, obviously. The same way African Americans, we have experience dealing with the domestic policies of the CIA and FBI and DEA within our communities. We ourselves, of African Americans, we have developed our national policy to deal with the the national policy of America, right? And we are intelligent enough to know when somebody don't seem right, when somebody seem like an agent, right? And because of that, that means the American government has to deal with us differently, because we're more educated and we're more capable, right? Same goes for the continent of Africa. Don't believe for 1 minute that Nigeria don't have their own CIA and FBI. Don't believe. Now, they may not be as capable as the American CIA and FBI, but that's for now. That's for now, right? So Nigeria has their own versions of FBI and CIA that are just as capable, that's able to send spies and diplomats, that's able to do clandestine operations. Nigeria does have their own special forces that happen to be Bantu black Africans, right? And if you know anything about the United States military, the best soldiers are African American soldiers. Why? Because we're more physically capable of doing physical things. And intellectually, we have a spatial awareness that's unmatched by anybody. Therefore, that helps us out when it comes to slinging little metal bullets across space, right? So we're good at all of that, right? Y'all hear me all the time say we are gods of war when trained, right? And in fact, we are gods of war, and we've been gods of war for thousands of years. So it's not out of the realms of reality to say that these Nigerians, who are our direct ancestors, who are our brothers and sisters, have that same capability when given the tools and the training to do so, right? So the Nigerian military, physically, right, they're dominant. Physically, all they need is the equipment to do what it is they need to do, and the training to have better tactics to do what they need to do. And that's it. And that's what they're seeking right now. And that's what they're leveraging their resources in order to get that in a more aggressive way. If you have not noticed, African nations are being more aggressive towards the West than they have in the past. Not even 10 years ago, you would never hear a head of state of any African country pushing back in any Western nation at all. They were in a subservient position. But African countries are tired of being in a subservient position. The black man is standing up, and the black woman is standing up. And once that happens, there is nothing anyone can do about it. So you either play ball or you're going to get rolled over. And so America doesn't want to get rolled over, because America is losing population. It doesn't have the tax revenue to maintain its level of financing its military and financing its business operations like it used to, right? It just hasn't caught up to everybody yet. If y'all not paying attention, America is not what it once was, right? In order for it to survive, it has to make deals with those it used to subjugate. And that's what's happening now. So we want America and all of its capability and training. We want African people to absorb that. We want them to become experts in that. And at some point, they will be able to train their own, and then they will be able to train other African nations, right, together. And that's what's happening. All African countries right now, in their own way, are pushing their countries forward and improving their business practices and making their militaries more capable by doing international businesses with other countries that need resources desperately, and they're utilizing their leverage to get all of this from various other countries, including drones, jets, bullets, armored vehicles. And also keep in mind, Nigeria has a private military industrial complex that's ever growing and one of the most advanced in the world. The Nigerian military is the 33rd most capable military in the world. You know how many countries there are in the world? Nigeria's already moved up to 33. All right. So that should be telling you something. And their military industrial complex is ever growing. They're making troop carrying vehicles that's being currently sold to Europeans who are using it in war right now. They have a navy, an ever growing navy, right? They're selling their homegrown naval vessels to other countries right now, right? They're also making their own weapons. They're making their own drones. All these things are happening. The production capability of Nigeria to be able to effectively protect themselves is growing. But while that's growing, in the meantime, they need expertise in various other fields that America just so happens to have and are able to, use to make deals in order to benefit themselves. If you are an American, you want America and Nigeria to have a great relationship, despite 500 years of exploitation. Living in the real world, you want America and Nigeria to have a great relationship. That way, we African Americans and African American Nigerians can go back and forth from Nigeria and America without having any issues with your visa and this and that. We need Ghanaians and Burkina Fasos and Malians and Nigers. We need all those people to be able to come to America, right? They're people to come to America, right? To go to school, work, vacation, do whatever they're going to do. And we need the ability to fly to these countries and go on vacation, go to school, and do what we need to do. Whatever we're doing, we need to have that kind of relationship, right? That's what we're moving towards, despite, like I said, all of the subjugation in the past. Now, as far as Tinubu is concerned, I do understand that it's very controversial him being elected. And I've seen a lot of Nigerians get upset with me because I'm highlighting the accomplishments of Tinubu, right? And listen, there's a difference between being biased. Nobody has gotten to me, but I'm objective. And the thing is, if I can't highlight the good things Tinubu has been doing on the international stage, then I don't have the right to criticize him when he does something that's not good for the people. There are a lot of things that I think that Tinubu should be doing for his people as far as jobs and infrastructure and things like that. I believe that he could be moving a lot faster on certain aspects. But the thing is, if you can't secure your country, you can't do anything. If you can't secure financing to build the infrastructure, then you'll never get the infrastructure. If you can't get foreign companies to come in your country to create jobs, you're not going to be able to employ your people. And that's just what it is, right? There's no country, there's no group of people on this planet, no matter how many resources they have, that can do it by themselves. This world is getting smaller and smaller, and we all need each other in certain aspects of life. So you have to expect Tinubu to get out of here, fly around the world as a diplomat, as the Nigeria's top diplomat, and make deals with countries in order to bring certain technologies and financing to his country. Now, there's elections coming up. I don't know who's running against Tinubu, but if there's a better candidate that can do this better, faster, I'm all for it, obviously, and I support the Nigerian people who are educated enough to make an educated vote to put the best person in charge. Now, if what happened this time, if the same thing happens last time, that happens this time, which we all kind of know that's probably going to happen because, we know how things go. That's just the way it's going to be. But it's the Nigerian people's job to try to make sure that doesn't happen. To make sure it's a free and fair election. Just like it's America's job to make sure that this current neo-Nazi administration don't try to steal the election the same way we're watching him do it, right? And as Americans, the way we judge African countries and their corruption, the way we judge them, right, I believe it's unfair because we don't take in consideration that they are they're puppets of not just white Western governments, but puppets of non-governmental organizations and companies that have trillions and trillions of dollars in order to bribe a politician to do what it is that they want. Same way in America, Citizens United. So we look at America and how it's operating right now, right? Over the last, 30, 40 years, you can just imagine Africa being in this position of raw resource acquisition, lacking the infrastructure necessary to develop their countries, and still being mired by politicians that are being bought out by the very same corporations that buy out our politicians, right? So we as the people need to do better to hold our politicians accountable, right? Which we can do via education. That's why education is the most important thing for all of us. Because if our population is not educated, especially politically, we are susceptible to the fast bullet points and quick words and feel-good moments that these politicians deploy in order to get themselves elected. Okay? But I would not worry about American. We want that. You want that. If you're a Nigerian, you want that. If you're an American, you want that. You want this kind of relationship to happen. You want America to help the Nigerian military. You want our militaries to be cooperative, to be able to work together on anywhere around the world as partners to eliminate, certain elements of humanity. Because you got to understand, there's bad guys everywhere. There's different levels of bad guys. Not too many good guys out here. All right. But this Islamic terrorism is way worse than this white Western world that we all live in. I'm telling you right now. You much rather live in this white Western world than that Islamic terroristic world. I'm telling you right now. Someone who lives in, obviously, the white Western world in America and has experienced what it is to be in an Islamic caliphate type country. I'm telling you right now, there's no comparison. You say what you want about that white man. He is not as bad as that Arab man. I'm telling you, not at all. And that Islam is not nowhere close. All right. But, it's just time for the black man to stand up. And the black man is doing it. And this is what it looks like. It's diplomacy. It's international cooperation with bigger nations that have more capability, because that is the only way we're going to be able to move forward. Anyway, I hope that I explained that to you. Tell me what you got to get in the comment section. This is Afro Think Tank. Learn something, teach something. I'm out.
And moving on to Nigeria, the US has put boots on the ground in the African country, which has been grappling with Islamic State terror attacks. And now, to counter the menace, the US has deployed a small military team to Nigeria. The move was announced by the head of the US Africa Command, General Zagvin Anderson. The US official said that the decision followed his meeting with Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu in Rome last year.
We agreed that we needed to work together on the way forward in the region. That has led to increased collaboration between our nations to include a small U.S. team that brings some unique capabilities from the United States in order to augment what Nigeria has been doing for several years.
Nigeria's Defense Minister, Christopher Musa, has also confirmed that a team was working in the country. Now, this announcement comes after the U.S. launched strikes targeting ISIS terrorists in Nigeria's Sokoto state on Christmas. The strikes were conducted in coordination with Nigerian authorities. U.S. President Donald Trump has been alternately pressuring and helping Nigeria to counter the ISIS terror. Nigeria is Africa's most populous country. It is broadly split between a Christian majority south and a Muslim majority north. Trump has alleged that there is a genocide of Christians ongoing in Nigeria. Now, back in October, Trump had warned that Christianity faces an existential threat in Nigeria. Now, he had also threatened to militarily intervene in the West African country, saying that it is not doing enough to protect its Christian citizens. Now, the Trump administration has also designated Nigeria as a country of particular concern over allegations of religious oppression. Abuja has strongly rejected Trump's claims, saying that terror attacks claim lives of both Christians and Muslims alike.
Nigeria's constitutional commitment to religious freedom and rule of law. All the answers are in there. And this is what guides us. And this is what shows that it's impossible for there to be a religious persecution that can be supported in any way, shape, or form by the government of Nigeria at any level, be it federal, be it regional, be it local. It's impossible.
The diplomatic dispute has led to increased military cooperation between Washington and Abuja.
We're charting the roadmap to deeper cooperation. From the Department of War perspective, it's counterterrorism related. So how can we enable our Nigerian partners to be more effective? And it's the whole gamut of intel sharing, sharing TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures, as well as enabling them to procure more equipment, the right equipment that will be the most effective against ISIS and other VEOs.
The U.S. has been conducting surveillance flights over the country from Ghana since at least late November. The U.S. Africa Command has said that its military support would be concentrated in northwestern Nigeria. For nearly 2 decades, Boko Haram and its splinter Islamic State West Africa province have been spreading terror in the region. Now, just yesterday, gunmen killed over 160 people in Kwara State. It is reportedly one of the deadliest attacks in Nigeria in recent months. The attack came after the military carried out operations in the area against what it called terrorist elements. As Nigeria's security situation remains grim, the US is stepping up its military presence in the country. Abuja has welcomed the move, and now it remains to be seen how America's boots-on-the-ground approach helps Nigeria resolve its security woes, and how it will impact the larger region.
The world doesn't fit in boxes, so why should your news? From battlefields to negotiation tables, from internet outrage to real-world injustice.
Free Sudan! Boycott diamonds and gold! Free Sudan! Boycott diamonds and gold! We most definitely cannot forget about the people of Sudan.
Thanks for watching Afro Think Tank. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And follow me on Substack and Patreon for more content. Remember, it's Pan-Africanism or nothing.